Jai Prabhuji. In today's class, we will explore the Advaitic perspective on the world, or Jagat in Sanskrit. The world is a subject that many philosophers, religions, different paths were trying to analyze and to explore. But we are focusing on the Advaita Vedanta perspective. So to understand the Advaita Vedanta's view of the world, we need to revisit its core principle, that behind this world lies one ultimate reality called Brahman. There is an entire class dedicated to the topic of Brahman, but since it's the foundation of Advaita Vedanta, we will keep returning to it throughout this course. Brahman is the essence of everything, while everything else is projected on it. And we will analyze this idea of the projected. What are we projecting on Brahman? And from this perspective, Advaita Vedanta sees the universe as a finite expression of the infinite. The finite, by definition, is limited, so it cannot be the infinite. If we're saying that Brahman is infinite and unattached and is unchangeable, what we see in this world, in the finite expression, that we see a constant change, a constant movement. And just from this small example, we can learn that according to Advaita Vedanta, what is real or what can be considered as truth is what is unchangeable, what cannot is not subjected to a change. Prabhuji gives a helpful analogy that imagine you're waking up in the middle of the night and you see a crocodile. So you wake up in the middle of the night, you see a crocodile, you feel that this experience feels real in the moment, but it vanishes as soon as we wake up. So as soon as we wake up to reality, the crocodile disappears. Now, any experiences that comes and go can't be recognized as real. And this is what is important for us to remember, specifically in this class, because we will analyze what can be considered real, what can be considered as truth. So anything that comes and goes cannot be recognized as real. Dreams are another good example, because they feel real while we are in them, but when we wake up, they disappear. But they disappear as thought they never existed. So what changes when we wake up? The dream doesn't disappear because of something that happened to it, or something happened to the frog that I dreamed about. It vanishes because we wake up and realize that it wasn't real. So the awakening reveals the unreality of the dream. It is not something that happened to something in the dream. We simply awoke. And while we are awake, we realize that the dream was not real. Now, this example leads us to the understanding that while we are seeing the world, while we see the objects around us, while we see ourselves, we see it with a veil of ignorance. But once the veil goes down, this is when we come to the realization of the reality. So it's not that we need to deal so much with what is happening in the dream, we just need to awake. Let's look at the verse from the Atma Bodha. the world, Jagat, appears to be true, Satyam, as long as Brahman, the substratum, the basis of all creation, is not realized. It is like the illusion of silver in mother of pearl. It's the Atma Bodha 7. What do we learn from this verse? That as long as we identified with our body-mind complex, we see ourselves as the center of the universe, but not only that, we apply to ourselves what is happening to us. And we view ourselves as separate from others, but not only separated from human beings, right? But separated from everything around us, from the chair, the table, the sky, etc. Now, this verse is showing us the basis of the egoic experience to apply to itself everything that is happening. And in this state, we fail to recognize the Brahmanic nature within ourselves, and because of that, we can't see it in others. Obviously, if I'm seeing myself as a body and I identified with my body and with my mind, and I don't realize my Brahmanic nature, I don't realize my true self, I cannot recognize it in you or as the basis of everything that is around me. So this sense of separation leads us to believe that we are different, and we fall more and more into the object-subject relationship. We perceive objects as separate, but we don't recognize the essence that connects them all. So according to the Atma Bodha, the world seems to us real only because we haven't realized Brahman yet. We can understand that the illusion persists only as long as we remain in ignorance. Once, and we go back to the idea we said before, once the veil of ignorance is going down, we are able to see and realize the truth, the essence that is beyond everything. You know that those people that even claim that what they experience with the senses is the ultimate truth. They say, I believe in what I see. And they trust very much their sensory perceptions, even without ever questioning. What is truly real is what I see here is real, and what I don't just doesn't exist. We can say that they ignore the fact that, our senses are limited, and we can be led to the wrong conclusions. I mean, the senses are the extensions of the mind. The mind is limited, therefore, they cannot perceive reality. We said that the finite is only a limited expression of the infinite. The mind is limited, the senses are limited. Obviously, they cannot perceive reality as it is. Let's look at another classic example in Advaita Vedanta of the snake and the rope. So, in dim light, when you walk in a trail, you mistake a rope for a snake. While you walk, you are convinced that what you see is a snake. Now, the snake doesn't exist. What exists is the rope. But what we can learn from it is that the snake is an illusion superimposed on the rope, which is the reality. Now, when the rope is clearly seen, the illusion of the snake disappears. Now, let's not get mistaken here, because we're saying that the snake is illusion, the rope is real, but in addition to that, while we saw the snake and we got scared, this is real. What we felt, the fear is real. So there is a reality, there is a certain reality to our experiences. It's just not the ultimate reality. But let's see what's happening when the rope is clearly seen, the illusion of the snake disappears, and we understand that it never existed. So similarly in Advaita Vedanta, the world and the individual self are superimposed on Brahman. But it's superimposed because of ignorance. And if we go back to the Atma Bodha verse, it says there that the world seems to us real as long as the illusion continues. So as long as we are in illusion, as long as we are in identification, we believe the world to be real, and we cannot see, or we are not exposed yet to the true reality. Now, when we talk about the reality, people say, oh, what can be considered real, what not? But there are levels of reality. There are 3 levels of reality, and we will read now from the Bhagavad Gita 2.16 that says, the seers of the truth have concluded that what is non-existence does not endure, and what is eternal does not change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. And Prabhuji explains that Advaita Vedanta recognizes 3 levels of reality: absolute reality, relative, and illusory. So absolute reality, Paramartika, is unchanging, eternal, and true in all times and conditions. The Vyavaharika, the relative reality, is temporary. It's the empirical, practical reality that we experience in our day-to-day. And there is the illusory reality, Pratibhashika, which refers to appearances that are real as long as the illusion lasts, like dreams, mirages, etc. So let's analyze these 3 levels of reality. When we talk about Paramartika reality, which refers to the absolute, which means to Brahman, the unchanging and the unaffected background of everything we perceive. Brahman doesn't come and go. It's always present. It is us who don't perceive it. Now, we keep saying that we don't perceive it, but here comes the question, what is the word? Because the word we do perceive, the word we do experience. So Advaita Vedanta says it's superimposed on Brahman. The superimposition is the process where we confuse the real, the Brahman, with the unreal, the world, the body, or the mind. And this leads us to the illusion of duality and separation. So we keep saying that there is a veil of illusion that separates us from being able to see and experience reality as is. But because we do the superimposition, we just fall more and more into the illusory way of life, we can say. And that brings us to the second level of reality, the Vyavaharika, which is the relative reality. And here Prabhuji writes, this is the empirical, practical, relative, and temporal reality that is based on subject-object relationships. Everything in this realm is defined by change. And if you look around or at yourself, we can all notice a constant change. Not that, only day to day, but we're talking here about moments to moment. The way we feel in the morning might be completely different from how we feel in the afternoon. Nothing is constant. We are also influenced by our surrounding and circumstances, and we also change in response to them. And in our daily lives, we often treat this temporary reality as if it were the only one. And we get so caught up in what's happening that we forget that it's all temporary. On the other hand, we can say that on the spiritual path, we don't ignore these experiences. I don't want us to sit here and get the impression that we're saying that there is no reality to any of our experiences. No, we don't ignore the experience. We say that they have their own reality, but it's a limited one. It's not ultimate one. So while we walk in the path and while we live our daily life with this illusion that we are the body and we are the mind, we don't ignore these experiences. Instead, we live with the understanding that there is an absolute unchanging reality beyond them. And it's very important here because okay, we understand that we are in illusion, but we always follow the scriptures and we follow the direction that we understand that there is an ultimate reality that we are still not yet revealed or still not yet experienced. And there is a verse in the Bhagavad Gita 2:14 where Krishna says, Matras parshastu kaunteya, shitos nasuka dhuka daha, agama paino nityas, tam titikshaswa bharata. Let's read the translation. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception of scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. This is a verse that we can practically practice in our day-to-day life. That it doesn't matter how we feel, joyful or sad, angry or calm, these emotions pass. Just like season. Krishna says here, it's like summer and winter seasons. It passes. And Krishna's advice here is very practical, is to learn to observe these emotions and not to get disturbed by them. We can start practicing in our everyday life when we observe our mind, when we observe our feelings, when we observe our thoughts, and we can also notice how we are changing every minute, not even in every day. And in previous classes, we used the analogy of the screen. So we all sit in front of a screen and we see a TV or a movie. And what we should strive to recognize is the unchanging reality behind all the changing appearances. We all experience the changing reality. One of the main characters of this egoic identification is that we strive to be in control. We see how the world is changing. We see ourselves, we see our surrounding, how it's under a constant change. And we are trying to get it under our control. We always want to feel that we are under control because we see how all this reality is just changeable. We see that like the way we felt with somebody is not the way that we feel afterwards. And we see even in small daily life, you see how one thing can throw us off. And the egoic phenomenon is we are trying to gain control. Part of the realization in spiritual life is to understand that we are not in control. Something else is in control here and not us. So we see the reality, we see the changeable reality, but we strive to recognize the screen. We aim, we could say our goal is to recognize the unchanging reality behind all changing appearances. In many darshans, when we sit with Prabhuji and we share with him sometimes about things that happen to us, the struggles, things that we believe to be true, our mental luggage, etc. I see how many times we are focusing on the story or on the things that bother us or the appearances that happened. But Prabhuji all the time takes us back to the core principle. Okay, I heard what happened, but try to realize the unchanging principle in all this. It doesn't matter so much what happened, but to whom it happened. And to try to realize the screen that anything happens doesn't touch the screen, because we are oftentimes get so caught up in what is happening that we believe it to be the truth. We believe it to be the reality. So this was all related to the relative reality that we experience. But there is another level of reality, which is the third, which is the illusory reality, the pratibhashika. And the pratibhashika reality refers to the apparent reality of illusions like dreams, mirages, or hallucinations. And they seem real while they last, but they disappear when we wake up or when we see the truth. A good example to give here is the reflection of the moon in the lake. Now, the reflection itself is visible and it might even look beautiful, but it's not the real moon. So when we look at the reflection, it's a real experience, it has its validation, but it's definitely not the real moon. So we cannot confuse it to be with the real moon. So this illusory reality is more related to dreams and hallucinations that, once we wake up, they disappear. So who is the seer? Who is the darshina? The darshina is the one who is aware of the unchanging reality and remains undisturbed by change. The darshina is the one who recognizes the constant presence that is unaffected, that no matter what happens, there is this constant presence that exists. Now, our perception is that there is me and anything else that around is what is outside of me. And we don't experience the common essence that exists in us all. and we don't recognize the substance that is in everything. We experience separation. We experience division, not unity. So the question is, do we experience the world, or do we experience our internal perception? Because if there was one reality, we should all feel the same. We should all perceive it the same, right? If we sit here in the same room, how come that each one of us feels it or perceive it differently? If there was only one reality, or we can say if it what's happening outside is what we can rely on, then there was no question. We would all feel the same about what we see and what we experience. But we see that there is a major difference between how each one of us perceive different situations. So it's not so much what is happening, but is the way we perceive it. And the way each one perceive it is related to the mental conditioning, to the state of mind that you woke up this morning. It's related to many internal processes that's going on that sometimes have nothing to do with what is happening externally. So Advaita Vedanta doesn't neglect the word, but pointing us to the realization that there is a higher reality, and what we can see is changeable, what we feel is changeable, what we think is changeable, but we are trying to recognize the unchangeable essence that is behind all this. So we can say in conclusion that in Advaita Vedanta, we don't reject the world or our experiences. Instead, we recognize that they aren't the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality is Brahman, the eternal, the unchanging, and the essence of everything. And our journey is to wake up from the illusion and see the truth as it is, just like as we awaken from a dream. This is why the dream example is important here, because while we dream, we are very much engaged in all that is happening. But once we wake up, the dream disappears. So it's not that something in the world needs to change, but is our awakening. Oftentimes when people come and meet Prabhuji, they ask him, okay, so what changes to the awakening one, to the enlightenment one? Like, does he see the same word? Does he see the same chair or table that I see? And it's led by a wrong conclusion that something in the external world is changing for the one who is realized. But that's not the case. What is happening is the one that is realized, the Darshina, the seer, is the one who realized the unchanging essence that lies behind everything. And he doesn't sees the separation anymore. He situated in the self, and therefore he is able to recognize it in each one of us and in everything that exists. So he can walk, he can drink, he can eat, he can use the table, and he can use the chair, but he is all the time with the realization of the unchangeable essence of all. So we can take from here that we have a direction where the scriptures is directing us, and the spiritual masters are indicating to us that don't be so entangled in what's happening. Or we can say differently that no matter what is happening, try to realize the unchanging essence of all. So I hope that we can take it to our day-to-day life and we can bring it into practice, because once we are observing, once we are aware that no matter what is happening is not the ultimate reality and it's changeable and it will pass, the most important thing is to realize what is unchangeable in us. Thank you for joining me today, and Jai Prabhuji.